More than any other series I have ever covered here on Anime Abandoned, the one that seems to dog at my heels constantly is the Tenchi series. Even though I have an entire subsection devoted to a certain meta-series, which I'll get back to, don't have a fit, the one mainstay that you can chart throughout the entire existence of AA is Tenchi, and I know that seems like a weird choice all things considered, but it just happened to be that way. In fact, if you go back to my first episode covering the series, Tenchi Muyo in Love, you'd probably be surprised to hear me say that I'm not a big fan of Tenchi. Well, things have changed. Chalk it up to time or what have you, but I feel like my opinion on the series as a whole has softened, and in some particular cases, even brightened. Sure, the OVA had a lot of missteps towards the latter half of its existence. By the way, I have yet to check out anything from the 4th season of the OVA, so I've no opinion on it. And the movies were either glorified fanfics or one elongated, mediocre episode. But I can't help myself from looking at Tenchi with quite a bit of fondness. And I really think that comes down to the character of Tenchi and the setting and characters that surround him. And what better way to test this notion than to look at the very first attempt to put theory to practice, Tenchi Universe. While Tenchi Ryooki was the first series in the canon, it was not without its growing pains. The multitude of retcons, the sloppy character writing, the breakdown of continuity, it just feels like they had a point A and a point B, but couldn't figure out how to connect the two without going through point C. In that way, you could probably look at Tenchi Universe as a mulligan on the whole concept. From top to bottom, Tenchi Universe really feels like a fresh new start. A full year passed between the end of Season 2 of Ryooki and the beginning of Universe, and hardly anyone who worked on Ryooki came to work on the series, save for a couple of script writers. To that end, Universe can be seen as the true canon of Tenchi. After all, it's this series that many of the other movies and other spin-offs seem to hold as the basis of past events. Even Daughter of Darkness, which might as well be orbiting Pluto for as close as it is to the main canon, still holds vestiges of the Universe series. So while Ryooki started the Tenchi formula, thus popularizing the harem genre, Tenchi Universe is that formula fully realized. But does that mean it still holds up today? Well, let's see. The first thing you'll notice when comparing Universe to Ryooki is just how much cleaner everything is, from the art style and animation to the story being told. No longer is Tenchi a troublemaking teenager that gets in way over his head when he disobeys his grandfather and goes where he ought not go, but instead, trouble finds him when Ryoko crashes onto Earth and drags Tenchi with her.
There he is! That's the space pirate!
What is going on here? I still don't understand this.
Oh no.
I think I'm starting to get it.
Believe it or not, having that little change of Ryoko crashing down on Earth does a whole lot to clear up the narrative clutter. There's no sudden attack, there's no sloppy retcon, there's just Ryoko attempting to trick Tenchi into being her scapegoat from a pursuing Mahoshi.
This is our destiny, and we two must share it. We promised to die together, remember?
I don't remember making you that promise.
From here, the story pretty much follows the same path blazed by Ryooki. Ayeka happens upon Mahoshi's distress beacon and winds up marooned on Earth, followed soon by her sister Sasami, and Washu replaces Ryoko as the ancient threat that Tenchi's ancestors have been protecting from the outside world. But then, out of nowhere, a puzzle piece no one knew was missing turns up as well.
Mahoshi, my partner. It's already been a month since you died. You were always such a burden to me. But now, I will never see you again. And that knowledge makes me so happy!
This is our first introduction to Kiyone, if we never saw the Mahoshi special. She's Mahoshi's partner, and the missing ingredient in a lot of character actions so far in the series. Before Kiyone, much of Mahoshi's shtick fell flat. She just seemed to be a space cadet, in both meanings of the word, whose antics never seemed to be focused on anyone in particular aside from herself, so her bungling around and generally acting like a complete idiot did nothing for the story and only served to be annoying in how it distracted from the story's proceedings.
In space calendar year 5903, he destroyed city ruins on the planet Ura. In space calendar year 5912, he kidnapped a girl from the Royal Space Science Academy on the planet Todain. In space calendar year 5923, he destroyed the palace on the planet Jirai. Excuse me, this was done by a different pirate called Rio Oki, suspected to have been connected to the other
This
incidents,
thing
but
just
has been
materialized me a cup of coffee!
While every once in a while Mahoshi would negatively affect somebody outside herself, it never registered beyond a single gag. As it is, Mahoshi just doesn't have a place in the story at large in Ryo-Oki, which only compounds how obnoxiously useless she is. But with Kiyone in Universe, now we have a comic foil who is directly affected by Mahoshi being a perpetual screw-up. She serves as our audience's proxy, as she reflects our feelings of frustration and vexation at having to put up with the persistent bumbling.
My grandfather told me you can get rid of a cold really quickly if you give it to someone else. I've had a slight cold since yesterday, but today I feel really great. You think I got this from you?
Would Ryoko be who she is if she didn't have Ayeka to be her foil? No, she wouldn't, and the same extends to Mahoshi. Additionally, because of Kiyone's presence, now Mahoshi has a more impacting place in the plot, since the presence and importance of the Galaxy Police is stressed more here than it ever has been. Until GXP at least. But we don't talk about GXP here. Not for a long, long time. Kiyone as a character, though, can be accused of just being the straight man of the group, but let's not downplay the importance of the straight man. After all, while all the funniest and most memorable lines of Ghostbusters belong to Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis, the three needed Ernie Hudson to not only expand the vacuum of the three's interlocking chemistry, but also to provide an outsider's perspective on the bonkers events that they've been privy to.
Every ancient religion has its own myth about the end of the world.
Myth? Ray, has it ever occurred to you that maybe the reason we've been so busy lately is because the dead have been rising from the grave?
I mean, without him, the movie would just devolve into this listless, directionless, aimless linorama that completely loses the plot and, oh. Likewise, Kiyone serves to ground the outlandish personalities that surround Tenchi, providing a counterbalance to what would otherwise be an overwhelming mess. At least she does when the characters can remember how to pronounce her name.
Kiyone, poor thing.
It also helps that Kiyone shows little to no outward affection for Tenchi, which is a great change of pace, and something I wish more harem shows would remember to do. Even Love Hina, as skin-peelingly awful as it is, remembers that not every single woman in the house has to gush at the sight of Keitaro. What's your excuse, Sekirei? Or Girls Bravo? But all of this would be for naught if the grander story being told was a veritable dud. And this is where Tenchi Universe's strength truly lies. It learned from Ryo-Oki's mistakes. The overarching plot of Universe is basically the exact same thing in Ryo-Oki. Yosho abdicates his Jiraiyan throne, starts a family on Earth, and his past comes back in the form of the malevolent Kagito. This time around, he's just some childhood rival of Yosho's and would-be usurper to the Jiraiyan royal family. Not some ill-defined nebulous science experiment that split himself into two genders for little to no reason, and goddammit, Season 3 sucked! Again, there's no cosmic deities, no religious trees and keys, and certainly no Tenchi turning into a god baby and destroying all existence. Just a simple story of an ordinary boy who is thrust into extraordinary circumstances with a grand destiny he could have never guessed. It might be simple and fairly rote when you put it to paper, but once again, it's about the execution. And as we established before, the series knows how to build the perfect everyman that anyone can get behind. Still, the story being told takes about 10 total episodes of the entire series run to tell, a series run that totals 26 episodes, which is where the rubber hits the road in terms of the Tenchi formula working as a regular series or not. Could Tenchi work on an episode-by-episode basis for an entire season? And the answer is... sorta? It's hit or miss. While the first few episodes take their time in building the entire cast and getting them situated where they needed to be, it takes quite a while for the actual space royalty plotline to get started, like over halfway through the series, quite a while. Which is perfectly fine. Not every story has the ability to tell itself over the length of 26 episodes and not overstay its welcome, so long as it knows how to pace itself and knows how to fill in the voids. Which is the point of filler.
Here it is! This door functions as a portal!
What? Why didn't we use this earlier, Washu? Tell me, please.
Because its range is only 800 meters. It doesn't work like it would in a cartoon!
Enemy abandoned will return in a moment.
Now that woman has really got something.
Enemy abandoned now continues.
Yes, filler, the dirtiest word to some, if not most, in the anime fandom. Filler conjures up images and memories of go-nowhere plotlines and pointless digressions that are never brought up nor even hinted at ever again. Ask any fan of any major shonen series about their feelings on filler, and be prepared to withstand a litany of complaints drowned in nerd rage. But it still has a place because it fills a need in anime production. So really the only thing an anime fan can do is expect the filler to be at the very least entertaining, which Tenchi Universe kind of does. To fill the void of space that the series has, the gang find themselves in a number of situations that run from the banal, like playing carnival games at a summer festival, to the outright science fiction, like being caught in alternate dimensions for 3 entire episodes. But what I want to focus on are 2 back-to-back episodes that are really a tale of 2 cities when it comes to entertaining filler episodes. No need for a genius, and no need for memories. Let's start with Paris. We begin with a typical day at the Masaki household, with Ayeka and Ryoko catching up on their stories.
I don't think it's a good idea. No.
Hi, it's time for the Happy Kids Fun Time Play Hour. How are all you happy kids today? Fine! And you?
In the Galaxy Police, the line between nepotism and charity case is razor thin. Annoyed with her presence, and who wouldn't be, the 2 shoo Mahoshi off, and she winds up in Washu's laboratory just as she's about to import her brain data into a robot body. You know, because science. Hey, do you think anybody in Japan ever saw Cronenberg's The Fly?
Okay, Tenchi, here we go. I will now be transferring the data. Could you turn on the switch on the bottom right of that console?
Just asking. Yep, you can see where this is going. Just one strand of Mahoshi's hair is enough to completely override Washu's DNA, and the robot becomes a second Mahoshi. Great. There's 2 of them. This is like finding out that there's a second Miles Teller. What's worse is that while Washu is a great character and the actress playing her does a fantastic job at being as arrogant yet wacky as the role calls for her to be, she can be a bit much.
Ms. Washu, you're the #1 genius scientist in the galaxy, and there's something I'd like to ask you to do for me.
No, not unless you call me Little Washu!
But as Mecha Washu, she's this weird amalgamation of not quite Mahoshi and certainly not quite Washu, but certainly 100% moron.
Oh, darn! I don't have a car to get into the city. Hold it right there! What? Finally, I found you. Now let's go back to the lab this instant, okay? Please don't stop me. I have to save the hostages and stop the bank robbers. I have to go.
I have no earthly idea what kind of direction this actress was given, other than talk like Homestar Runner took a boat paddle to the face.
Killing an officer is a very grave offense. You must be severely punished.
I say there, monstrosity. Do you know the times?
So, what do they do with this brilliant premise? They play exploding volleyball! And when that doesn't go anywhere, Makewashu just beams everybody and everything in her path while having a crying fit. Thankfully, Kiyone finally arrives.
Tenchi, does that robot have the mind of Mahoshi? Is that it?
Spoken like a woman who's been to the rodeo before. When you're Mahoshi's partner, you bear witness to all kinds of pants-on-head dumbassery. So it's natural that Kione knows what to do. Wait a few minutes for Mahoshi's cartoon to come on, and then sneak up behind a distracted Mecha Washu and turn it off.
Wow, it's a great show. You are such a good girl. Now hold still for me, okay?
Wow!
Bypassing override! I am alone!
And we end our episode with Washu attempting another robot clone of herself. Except this time, it's Ryo-Oki who Cronenbergs it up. Uh-oh! So, what was the point of this episode? Some like to point to this episode in particular as evidence that Mahoshi is actually some distant relative of Washu's, as was alluded to back in the OVA series, but does the show do anything with this notion? No, it doesn't. It also doesn't advance the story, it's not that funny, and worst of all, the characters don't learn anything new, nor does the audience learn anything new about them. So really, this is all just an entirely dead-on-arrival episode. But now, let's take a look at London. Our next episode is a remarkable departure from the last. While No Need for a Genius was loud and obnoxious, No Need for Memories is calm and contemplative. We open with Tenchi waking up to find that it's currently snowing. While some either love the weather and all the little childhood joys it entails, Tenchi still has to practice his swordsmanship even in the inclement conditions.
Already giving up, huh?
No, not yet.
Huh? He handles that sword as if he were from Shirai.
It'd be fairly easy to draw parallels between this episode and the third episode of the OVA, since they both share the same purpose of hinting at Tenchi's Jiraiyan lineage. But while the OVA chose to focus on the developing, really creepy when you stop to think about it relationship between Ayeka and Tenchi,
Here on Earth, you may think it odd to marry your brother, but on Jirai, it's not.
the TV series, on the other hand, chose to focus on something entirely different. Aside from the snow, the day seems like any other, but with Tenchi's dad Nobuyuki carrying around flowers and Yosho being unusually friendly to him as well, something seems amiss. Like how a 17-year-old boy can buy alcohol when the legal drinking age is 20.
Oh no, we are out of sake.
What? Out already? Tenchi, go buy some more.
Why me, Grandpa?
Just go get more sake.
Please go to the store first, Tenchi.
Yeah, can you be a deer and walk 5 miles into town, in the snow, while wearing sandals, so you can buy us some booze? Thanks, doormat! Oh look, Nobuyuki busts out the special sake. It's almost like they just wanted to get Tenchi out of the house, and into the bitter cold, the absolute jerks. Still, there is an air of solemn occasion that hangs over the entire episode. And then the blade finally drops. Well, after a weird digression where Tenchi suddenly becomes ill but is cured by the sap of Ayeka's magical tree sapling, after that, Tenchi finally remembers that the last time it snowed was the day his mother died. Compelled to pay his respects, he races to her site where he sees his father and grandfather already paying theirs. The episode ends with Tenchi reaffirming himself and perhaps making a connection to a destiny he can only imagine. Saying that comparing these two episodes as a tonal 180 would be putting it mildly, but it does go to prove just how erratic the episodes of Tenchi Universe can be. They can be silly and obnoxious, or quiet and beautiful. Tenchi Universe can definitely be summed up as hit or miss, but that is par for the course for many a television show, as a series benefits from audience leniency due to its episodic nature as compared to a movie or even an OVA series. It's no wonder that future entries hitch their narrative trailer to Universe. But if you ask me point blank which I'd prefer, I'd still have to give it to Ryo-Oki. Warts and all. You see, while there are many a problem with the OVA, many a problem, it has something that Universe can never have. The distinction of having laid the groundwork for everything. Don't get me wrong, just because Ryo-Oki came first doesn't mean it's the best. But the simple fact remains that without Ryo-Oki, there wouldn't be a Tenchi Universe. Or at the very least, not as we know it. Tenchi Universe, at the end of the day, was the earnest attempt at telling the story of Tenchi Masaki without all the hang-ups that arose during the production of the OVA. And for the most part, it succeeded, but because of that, it's saddled with being dependent and derivative of the OVA. It can never truly be its own thing, despite its noble attempts at changing what it could. It added a new character, it did away with cosmic beings, which keeps the story focused, and it did more with the characters than was previously possible under the restrictions of the OVA. But the story is ultimately the same, and that cannot be denied. Maybe if I saw Universe before I saw Ryo-Ohki, I might feel inclined to give the edge to Universe simply because it is a better told story, but when so much is dependent upon what Ryo-Ohki did, I feel it would be disingenuous. It's like when people praise the Rebuild movies saying they're better than the original Evangelion. Well, of course they are! That's their purpose! It's in the title, numbnuts! I'm not ruling out the possibility that I could be blinded by my own personal nostalgia, but if I'm not honest with all of you right now, then what the hell am I doing? If you were put off by Ryo-Ohki tumbling over the cliff like it did, then perhaps Universe was more your cup of tea. I mean, how could it not, but that just means it did its job. As long as people give the OVA its proper due, then I can walk away happy. Toonami month is almost over, but before it can make its dramatic exit, I think it's time we examine a franchise that, quite frankly, I never really liked. But that's entirely on me. It's going to be a test of fairness, as next week we'll finally talk about Sailor Moon. Till next time.